Hello, dear listeners. Welcome to the Telehead Audiobook channel, where stories come to life through the magic of sound. I am your host, Telehead, and I'm here to guide you through a world of imagination. Hawthorne crossed over and ended up in a saintly monastery full of beautiful women. Here, he met intellectual and gentle Sister Heidi, petite and aloof Sister Yuta, knowledgeable and gentle Sister Butterfly, and Sister Celine, who had a leader's temperament, maturity, and steadiness. But having cleared the pure love route in the game Witch Monastery, he knew very well that each of them was a terrifying monster that devoured people without blinking an eye. So, sit back, relax, and let the stories unfold. Let's embark on this adventure together.
Chapter 6, Night of the Witch. Hawthorne lay weakly on the bed. Just now, he truly felt that he was on the brink of death. With Yuta's strength, it would be effortless for him to take away his fragile life. Even if Heidi wanted to protect him, it would be nearly impossible to do so. Fortunately, the other party looked down on oneself enough and did not intend to have a falling out with another noble witch because of oneself, a mere plaything, so one could barely preserve one's life. Okay. Continue to underestimate me, witches. Only then can I steal the time to grow and develop, and then one by one, seize your weaknesses and make you pay for your actions. He silently murmured in his heart, and then, beside him, Heidi rushed to the bed with a worried face, hugged his arm, and whispered, "Master, I'm afraid you will suffer some grievances these days. Without me by your side, please don't wander around the monastery. My witch sisters, each and every one of them are ruthless individuals who wouldn't hesitate to devour someone. If they were to catch sight of you, there's a high probability that they wouldn't show any mercy and would simply drain your soul." Thinking of that outcome, her mood suddenly became extremely fearful. She held Hawthorne's hand, her body trembling, afraid to let go. Hawthorne also held her small hand in his other hand, calming down, and gently persuaded her, "This little grievance is nothing to me. It's just that I feel Yuta." Thinking back, the Blade Witch's unmasked anger and intent to kill made him unable to help but feel a headache. She really wanted to kill me. And Yuta's strength, according to the background description, should be second only to Celine, the Fate Witch who can manipulate people's destinies, in the monastery. If they really fought, Heidi would definitely not be her opponent. In other words, Yuta doesn't want to ruin the harmony between the witches. Otherwise, he would definitely be doomed today. Listening to him speak like this, Heidi's face also turned gloomy. With Yuta's sharpness, she must have already noticed that my master and I have a deeper and closer relationship, so because of her arrogant nature, she is so determined to kill my master. Witches feed on human souls, just as humans feed on bread. They may temporarily disguise themselves as humans in order to prey, but in the hearts of these evil beings, humans are always incredibly lowly and despicable creatures. They don't even have the concept of cherishing food. If it weren't for some humans who have received the blessings of the gods and can guide divine power to inflict heavy damage on the witches, these guys would be even more reckless than they are now. And so, when Yuta discovered that Heidi, a noble witch, would actually mate with a human, a strong sense of insulted anger arose within her heart. Unfortunately, unless she also experiences the fulfillment and peace of mind that comes from being purified by the master, Yuta will not be able to understand my choice. Heidi hugged Hawthorne's arm, talking to herself, with a look of regret in her eyes. Hawthorne, upon hearing her words, smiled gently and then squeezed her little hand, saying, "This day won't last long, trust me, Heidi. I have a way to overcome her." Upon hearing this, Heidi's eyes immediately lit up, but then her expression turned worried. "Master, Yuta's fighting style tends to focus on striking the vital points and killing with a single blow, which is very different from me, a witch who fights using spells. With the current condition of the master's body, even if the power of Yuta is restrained using that purifying energy, she is fully capable of directly taking away the master's life." Saying this, she leaned over and wrapped her arms around Hawthorne's neck, pressing her face against his. "I'm sorry, Master, I had no idea how to restrict her ability to act. And I don't want to see you in danger. I can't imagine what meaning my life would have left if I were to lose you." Hawthorne gently patted her back, feeling her pure and unadulterated affection, which was both strange and warm in his heart. At noon, she and herself were still relentless. Which, truly wonderful. Alright, don't worry. I won't take any risks until I have 100% certainty, he whispered, while in his mind, he already had a rough plan. He knew Yuta's weakness, or more accurately, he knew the weaknesses of all the witches. Witches' Night. When the twin moons hang high in the night sky together, the barriers of the world become fragile. Terrifying magic will accompany the sinister plot of the evil god, sweeping through all cities and wilderness. The more mundane creatures, like ordinary humans, are less affected by this magic. At most, babies born on this day may experience some physical changes, such as growing a sixth finger or having a stronger affinity for magic. The more creatures are related to magic, such as ghosts, demons, elemental beings, etc., the greater the impact they will receive. They will suffer in agony, mutate, go mad, or even commit suicide. Only those with extensive experience can suppress the restlessness brought by this magical power and safely get through the night. In short, Witches' Night is a large-scale event that occurs in the game every 6 months to 2 years. On this day, various evil spirits and monsters cause trouble, monsters go berserk and mutate, attacking each other and even assaulting cities. In short, chaos occurs all over the world. As the pillars of support for players, the witches naturally experience the greatest impact and encounter various troublesome issues. However, this is also an opportunity for players to conquer the witches who have not yet submitted. In order to avoid identity exposure and to prevent others from taking advantage of their weakness, witches often choose to find a place to hide and escape this night. And if we can find the place where they are hiding, then we can easily subdue them. And Yuta happens to lose her power during the Witches' Night, becoming extremely weak, making her a perfect target for early players to steal a victory and subdue her as a witch. So, as long as you endure for a while, just wait for the night of the witch to come. Next, it's all about luck, it depends on when the next Witches' Night will come. Hawthorne silently planned in his heart, and then suddenly his stomach made a hungry growl. Gurgle dash. Suddenly, he snapped out of his daydreams about a bright future and his expression became somewhat awkward. He actually didn't eat much at noon, after all, he was in a hurry to purify Heidi, and after that, they engaged in such intense physical activity for such a long time. Although he is currently in high spirits and feeling great, these things cannot fill his empty stomach. So now, his stomach is the first to protest. And in response to this, Heidi smiled. She then got up and prepared to leave. Master, I will go and make some food for you. You rest here and please do not go out. As long as you don't leave this room, the other witches won't bother you. Hawthorne nodded, originally not intending to refuse Heidi's arrangement. However, just as the nun turned around and was about to walk to the door, he suddenly straightened up and said, "Wait." Heidi stopped in her tracks, turned her head, and looked at him in confusion. Hawthorne then got out of bed, put on his slippers, and walked over, taking her hand. Your kitchen, I suppose you don't use it much normally, right? Heidi nodded, besides feeding porridge and occasionally feeding the captured food, it is generally not used. Witches feed on souls, so they don't need to eat. As for the rice porridge, it is a means for witches to find food. They will select the most lonely and neglected among the poor who come to receive the porridge, and then capture them and bring them back to the monastery, just like Hawthorne. After all, even if such a person goes missing, no one will care. And people who are caught like this are usually sucked to death in 1 or 2 days. Witches find it troublesome and naturally often do not feed them. Only someone like Hawthorne, who has extremely high charm and witches are reluctant to play with him to death in just 1 or 2 days, may be able to cook and make some simple meals for them. So, the kitchen of the monastery is generally rarely used. So, if I were to make some changes to the kitchen, would you be able to pass it off? Hawthorne continued to inquire. Absolutely. Heidi said, the other witches hardly ever step foot in the kitchen, so no matter what reason we give for making changes in there, they won't mind, or even notice. That's good. Hawthorne was eager to try, and at the same time, his fingertips were still swiping in front of him, on a system screen that Heidi couldn't see, moving back and forth. So, let me transform this place and turn the kitchen into my first monastery architecture. Chapter 7, Monastery Architecture. The room where Hawthorne lived was almost adjacent to the kitchen. After all, the convent where the witches used to hide was not very large in size. According to the system's data, it totals only 2,200 square meters. After setting aside the necessary areas for prayer, studying, exercise, landscaping, resting, cooking, and serving porridge, there isn't much space left for the nuns' accommodation. Even the kitchen of the monastery is not very large. It has a total area of less than 50 square meters, with only a stone stove capable of cooking large pots of wheat porridge, and a stack of firewood behind the stove. On the other side of the stove, there are vegetables such as radishes and potatoes. It seems that these vegetables have wilted a bit because they have been left there for too long. On the earthy yellow wall hangs several knives, spoons, a few salted fish, and a large chopping board. Underneath the kitchen utensils is a jar of salt, with a stack of plates next to it. Apart from these, there is nothing else. Hawthorne scratched his head as he looked at the shabby surroundings, saying, "There really isn't much here." Heidi also felt a bit awkward. After all, witches themselves have no need for food. Whether it was giving porridge to the poor or feeding the people they captured, as long as there was something to eat, they didn't care about the taste. "I can go buy some ingredients and seasonings now," she continued. At this time, the fishermen should have just returned with fresh seafood. And the grocery store should still be open. Since the ceasefire with the Amazonians, the port in the Nangang district has gradually reverted back to a fishing port. The port of Libreville follows a policy of absolute economic freedom, so the local residents do not receive any support or assistance. They can only rely on fishing to sustain their impoverished lives, working from sunrise to sunset. Although witches themselves do not need to eat, they are also familiar with the local people's habits, otherwise, they would not be able to accurately capture the locals and quietly bring them as food. Therefore, Heidi is well aware that at this time, she can buy a lot of fresh sea fish when going out. Hawthorne shook his head slightly, raised his hand, and stopped her action. "No need, I have a better way." Saying this, amidst Heidi's bewildered gaze, he extended his finger and gently manipulated the system screen in front of him, which only he could see, reading the explanatory text displayed on it. The process of purifying Heidi, he really gained a lot, not only gaining such a witch who listens to him, but also earning 1,150 purification points. To upgrade the core building of the monastery, the prayer hall, from level 1 to level 2, only requires 1,000 purification points. However, to purify ordinary level 1 buildings, such as the kitchen, dormitory, and warehouse, only 100 purification points are needed. So, this income of over 1,000 is already enough for him to improve the situation. For example, take my own attribute. Even though I am already 15 years old, I only have the strength of an 8-year-old, and even the physique of a 7-year-old. I am not even as strong as many children, or even some malnourished goblins. I must make sure to replenish myself properly. However, the way he supplements attributes is not by directly allocating purification points to himself, but by allocating points to kitchen. The reason is also very simple. He just tried it a moment ago and found out that, just like in the game, directly spending money to enhance attributes is outrageously expensive. When the attribute value is below 13, it requires 100 purification points to increase the attribute by 1 point. When it is 13 or above, it requires 200 points to increase by 1 point. And when it is 15 or above, it already requires 300 points, and if it is higher, it will require even more. The purification points he currently has on hand are simply not enough for a few clicks. Moreover, attributes are only one aspect of strength. Even if he now allocates all his attribute points to be above 18, it is still difficult to see an immediate improvement in his strength. He still needs to obtain a profession, train in specialties, and learn magic. These are the true components of combat power and also where the majority of purification points are spent. So, he really doesn't have any extra points, so he directly spent them on improving his attributes. It's better to spend 100 points first to build the kitchen, and then gradually improve his physical condition through diet and nurturing, spending the least amount of money to accomplish the most. He is only 15 years old and still has plenty of room for growth. As long as he starts conditioning now, everything is still possible. Looking at the window that popped up on the screen in front of him, which said, "Do you want to spend 100 purification points to build a level 1 kitchen?" Hawthorne decisively clicked, yes. Afterwards, his consciousness suddenly pulled away, as if rising into the sky, and then overlooking the entire Nangang district below. However, at this moment, in his field of vision, everywhere else is pitch black, only the monastery is bright, just like the building interface in the game. Obviously, in the system's judgment, this is his territory, so he can do whatever he wants here. Oh, there are clearly still 6 of them inside, powerful witches that I could easily crush with my bare hands. Without Heidi accompanying me, I wouldn't dare go anywhere. Hawthorne chuckled self-deprecatingly in his heart, then stopped pondering these thoughts and focused on the task at hand. His fingertips slid across the screen, and as he moved them, a virtual image of a kitchen building would also shift accordingly. This is to let him choose the location for the building. Everything is exactly the same as in the game. Afterwards, he placed the kitchen in the same position as where he is now, completely overlapping with the current kitchen of the monastery, and then double-clicked. So, another dialog box popped up in front of him. There is already another building in the designated kitchen location. It is determined to be a regular kitchen. Do you want to merge it with the existing one? Hawthorne immediately pressed yes, and in the next moment, his consciousness returned to his body, and the scene before his eyes also returned to the interior of the kitchen. And then, in the shocked gaze of Heidi beside, the entire kitchen lit up with a hazy white light, identical to the glow when it purified her. And in that light, everything in the kitchen is rapidly changing. The originally crude stone stove is quickly replaced by a row of metal stoves of different sizes. The number of knives hanging on the wall is rapidly increasing, with various sizes and models of kitchen utensils such as boning knives and meat cleavers neatly arranged on them. And below the kitchen knife, various seasonings such as fine salt, soy sauce, chili, sweet bean sauce, etc. are also neatly arranged, waiting for him to show off his skills at any time. Hawthorne enjoyed Heidi's shocked gaze, feeling incredibly satisfied. Although it wasn't his own ability, but rather the system's credit, still, he managed to astonish a lovely witch, didn't he? Finally, the white transformation light completely extinguished. Looking at a kitchen that was more than twice the size of the original and filled with various cooking utensils and tableware that she didn't recognize, Heidi was astonished beyond measure. "This. Master, how did you manage to do this?" Saying this, she suddenly thought of something, turned around quickly, walked outside, and looked at the kitchen that looked the same and had the same area. She was even more shocked to realize that inside the kitchen, it had become a separate and independent space. Create a demi-plane. This is something that can only be done with the 8-ring spell, but the master clearly has no magic power and will not release any magic. How did he do it? Watching Heidi slowly walk back, Hawthorne was also surprised. After all, he had never actually seen what the details in the kitchen of the game were like. But that didn't stop a slight smile from forming at the corner of his mouth as he softly said, "This is exactly the secret that can bring you happiness and a sense of security, Heidi." Suddenly, the girl restrained all her astonishment and her smile blossomed like warm spring flowers. She threw herself into Hawthorne's arms, holding onto his arms, squinting her eyes, with a smile on her lips, expressing endless admiration and happiness. "I understand now, Master is capable of anything." Hawthorne felt incredibly satisfied in his heart. Then, he looked towards the stove in front of him and gradually became ambitious. "Next, Heidi, the Master will show you what culinary skills are all about." Chapter 8, The Path of Magic. To be honest, Hawthorne is not very good at cooking. Although his family used to urge him to learn in his previous life, until he crossed over, he could only make simple dishes like soup or scrambled eggs. He could only sigh at slightly more complex dishes. But his cooking skills are rudimentary and useless. He can't even handle the kitchen himself. He just needs to stand here, then click twice on the system panel, select ingredients and products, and finally give orders to the kitchen. Under the magic of the kitchen itself, the kitchen knives automatically fly in the air, skillfully handling ingredients such as onions, dried shrimp, carrots, potatoes, and so on. The large stove in front automatically ignites. Sauté the onions with olive oil, then add clean and clear spring water. After cooking all the vegetables, finally add prawns, refined salt, and pepper as seasonings. So, a pot of seafood and vegetable soup, far superior in flavor to Heidi's previous cooking, was thus completed. Although Hawthorne only made a few clicks on the system interface during this process, it did not prevent him from feeling a sense of joy and accomplishment. He then poured the soup into a bowl, and stood in the kitchen, using a spoon to scoop up a little bit of the thick soup with golden oil floating on top. He could smell the delicious aroma wafting nearby, and couldn't resist the desire to share. He brought the spoon to Heidi's mouth and shamelessly said, "Here, Heidi, taste my cooking." In Heidi's eyes, there was a ripple of admiration, but she did not refuse. With her mouth slightly open, she took the spoon into her mouth and drank the hot soup. Afterward, she looked at him seriously and said, "It's delicious, the master's cooking skills are excellent." Hawthorne had been observing her expression and did not notice the obvious sparkle in her eyes change. He felt a little disappointed and asked, "Heidi, do you actually not really like human food?" Upon hearing this, Heidi's expression immediately showed a hint of apology. "I'm sorry, master. As witches, we feed on souls, so during my previous process of disguising myself as a human, I did not give myself the ability of taste. Okay, it seems that she really can't taste what flavor this soup is. Perhaps there was a hint of astringency in the previous seafood soup, and it's not entirely the fault of the seasonings used in this era." With this thought in mind, he no longer forced Heidi to eat this kind of thing. He scooped up a spoonful with a small spoon, tested the temperature with his lower lip, and then tilted his head back to drink it. Suddenly, the aroma of oil, the deliciousness of shrimp, the sweetness of vegetables, and the salty taste provided by refined table salt without any bitter impurities exploded in Hawthorne's taste buds, almost moving him to tears. "Ah, my skills are really good." Shamelessly taking credit for all the hard work in the kitchen, he then swallowed the soup and felt a warm stream flowing down his esophagus, slowly entering his stomach, and then rapidly spreading throughout his body. Because of the lack of energy, the slightly cold body suddenly feels this warmth, causing goosebumps all over. Every cell longing for nourishment is emitting joyful cheers. "This is an absolute delight. I never expected that the second benefit I would experience in this otherworldly place would be food." He sighed in his heart, and at this moment, Heidi thoughtfully brought out a basket of sliced white bread from another corner of the kitchen. Without a doubt, the bread was cold and dry, not suitable for eating directly. But now, Hawthorne had such a delicious and thick soup in his hands. So he tore the bread apart and soaked it in the soup. After the soup thoroughly soaked into the bread, he used a spoon to scoop it up, mixing it with vegetables and shrimp to eat together. So, the high-density protein in the shrimp, the vitamins in the vegetables, and the starch in the bread and potatoes, which can serve as the main source of energy, all entered his stomach together. After being finely broken down and absorbed by the strong acid in the stomach, they were transported through the blood to every part of his body, allowing each hungry cell to emit a satisfied sigh of relief. He drank the entire pot of soup in one breath, and then ate 15 pieces of dry bread. He felt warm all over and his stomach was slightly bloated, finally ending the meal. Neither of them washed the dishes, as the kitchen system had a built-in cleaning function. After they left, a purifying white light automatically restored everything to its original state, except for the consumed ingredients. Everything was exactly the same as before. Hawthorne returned to his room with a satisfied mood and half laid on the bed to digest. Heidi accompanied him throughout, her eyes filled with love, unwilling to leave his side for a moment. However, at this moment, after being fully satisfied, he looked at this shabby room and immediately furrowed his brows slightly. It's too monotonous and not comfortable to live in. Afterwards, if you want to take care of your body, a good rest environment is also very necessary, so call up the system. He tinkered with the architectural interface and merged another building, dormitory, with his current room. In the game, this is the place where witches rest, which can greatly improve the witch's mood and physical recovery speed, and can also automatically heal some injuries. In short, this is also a magical building like a kitchen. So, accompanied by a purifying white light and Heidi's surprised and adorable eyes, this monotonous little room slowly transformed into a layout similar to his previous life's bedroom. The area almost doubled. The small bed by the window turned into a spacious 2-meter-wide soft bed, with his desk as the headboard and his wardrobe opposite. There was even a hanging lamp on the ceiling. However, that lamp definitely cannot light up. Although this world has started using electricity, it does not have Tesla or alternating current like the people of the 20th century in the previous world, so this world cannot use cheap electricity like them. The people in this world use electricity by storing it in blocks of electric energy stones, like giant batteries, and then putting them into various electrical appliances for use. Naturally, the cost of this practice is extremely high, so except for a small portion of the upper-class society, other places cannot afford such things. As one of the few major ports in the world, Le Havre is wealthy enough, but the wealth gap is also enormous. The upper class almost lives in modern society, while the lower class almost lives in primitive tribes. And the place where the monastery is located is almost equivalent to the slums of Nangang district. In addition, in order to avoid attracting attention, the witches naturally cannot afford electricity. However, these are all minor matters. As for lighting, although witches do not have such a need, if they really want it, using magic as a substitute is more than enough. Heidi pointed her finger at the chandelier on the ceiling and silently recited a spell, completing a magic trick called lighting spell. The magic energy wrapped around the chandelier, and a soft light illuminated from it, instantly brightening up the entire room. Hawthorne looked at all of this with envy, but unfortunately, the system did not directly grant him the ability to cast spells. He would have to obtain and learn these things on his own before he could seek the system's help to level up. How can obtaining the ability to cast spells be so easy? According to the setting, there are approximately 1 million permanent residents in Libre Port, but even if we include those who use magic items to cast spells but actually have no magical power themselves, the number of people in the city who are capable of casting spells definitely does not exceed 30,000. And those who truly possess the ability to cast spells and can unleash a single ring spell with their own abilities, I'm afraid there are only a little over 10,000 people. Yes, the total number of people who have the ability to cast spells includes wizards and bards who learn through studying, priests and paladins who cast spells through deities and oaths, druids and rangers who cast spells through nature, warlocks who awaken their own spellcasting abilities, and sorcerers who gain spellcasting abilities by making pacts with powerful creatures, as well as others who gain spellcasting abilities for various reasons such as choosing a certain path, ancient blessings, career advancement, or specialized training. Altogether, it's just over 10,000 people. Therefore, true spellcasters are all exceptional elite talents, each one in 100. The fundamental reason is that the conditions for casting spells are too demanding. If you don't have obvious talent, just be a warrior or a wanderer honestly, and don't fantasize about changing the world and controlling the wind and rain. Although Hawthorne's first three-dimensional attributes are low, the last 3 dimensions are all above average. Plus, he is only 15 years old this year and still has room to grow, so in terms of talent, he definitely has it. However, due to his impoverished family background, he could only receive basic education in the church school during his childhood, making it impossible for him to pursue any magical studies. Therefore, the path of the mage seems to be impassable at the moment. As for the warlock, there is no need to even consider it. He doesn't seem like the inheritor of any prestigious family, and it is highly unlikely that he will suddenly awaken one day. As for taking refuge in a certain deity and making vows, it is somewhat difficult for him, who is essentially a modern East Asian person, to accept. As for embracing nature, should it be as a druid or a ranger? The idea is good. After all, these 2 professions have no other shortcomings except for being weak. Fortunately, despite the numerous difficulties ahead, Hawthorne, as a hardcore player who pursues pure love, is very clear about the biggest shortcut to becoming stronger in this world. Moreover, this shortcut can maximize the advantage of my 20 charm points. Heidi, he whispered to the witch beside him, can you sign a contract with me and become my master, then share with me your ability to cast spells? Chapter 9, The Sorcerer's Pact. This is the path of the sorcerer. Extraordinary mortals with exceptional charm often attract powerful supernatural beings and various peculiar magical creatures' attention. In most cases, this kind of attention would bring disaster to these mortals, just like Hawthorne being noticed by Heidi. But in rare cases, these individuals can also seize the opportunity to sign contracts with these powerful beings, becoming their representatives in the material world and sharing in the immense magical power of their masters. This type of professional is generally referred to as a sorcerer by the outside world. Without a doubt, this is a shortcut for ordinary people to become stronger, and it is almost the most suitable path for Hawthorne at the moment. Because the higher the charm, the stronger the affinity for various external extraordinary energies, the smoother the process of receiving the power of the host, and it will be easier to become stronger in the future. This is Hawthorne's idea, but upon hearing this, Heidi's expression became worried. Master, it's not that Heidi doesn't want to share her own power with you. However, although my strength is considered decent in the Nangang district, compared to those truly powerful individuals in the outside world, I am still somewhat weak. Her concerns are not unfounded. Although Heidi's strength is considered to be in the top 3 of the monastery, her position is not very stable. However, compared to many powerful beings in this world, such as the Supreme Fairy Queen of the Fairy Wilderness, the Devil Grand Duke of Bateau Hell, and the ancient gods and demons from the distant Star Sea, she is really not impressive enough. So, Heidi is very worried that if both parties sign the contract, she will not be able to share too much power with her master, which would limit his potential greatly. And with that, Hawthorne smiled gently and then held her hand. But I believe in you, Heidi. Compared to those powerful but deceitful beings, I would rather trust your sincerity. Moreover, I can't encounter those powerful beings right now, so I can only choose you, right? This is his true thought in his heart, but such words are too hurtful, so he would never say them. He gently gazed into Heidi's eyes and then added, strength and weakness don't matter. In the future, we can practice together and become stronger, right? Suddenly, Heidi was so moved that she almost shed tears. Master. She could no longer restrain her surging emotions, and suddenly threw herself at him, kissing his lips and then reaching out to undress him, unexpectedly taking the initiative to seek pleasure. Ooh! Hawthorne was caught off guard and his mouth was sealed by those warm and soft lips. Then, he felt a lilac tongue slipping between his lips and teeth, playfully teasing his own tongue. Suddenly, an indescribable anger surged in his lower abdomen. Now that the beauty was in his embrace, fragrant and soft as jade, he immediately disregarded any contracts and flipped over, pressing her beneath him. What upgrade becomes stronger? Let's talk about it later. Heidi whispered, and Hawthorne had already lifted her wide nun's robe, revealing her snow-white delicate body underneath. His large hand roamed over her smooth torso, his rough fingertips from hard work climbing up her tender snow peaks, teasing the most sensitive buds. And although this witch is shy, she is also trying hard to help him take off his pajamas, her delicate hands guiding his body to become one with hers. Oh dash! Ah! The room was filled with the girl's joyful moans and the man's satisfied sighs. The bottom of the chandelier still emitted a soft glow, casting their writhing figures onto the walls. Accompanied by the crisp sound of bodies colliding and splashing water, it was like a thrilling art film. Finally, 1 hour later, exhausted Hawthorne lay on the bed, gasping heavily, his mind blank, his eyes slightly lifeless as he stared at the ceiling, as if savoring the lingering aftermath of the intense battle just fought. And beside him, Heidi, completely naked, obediently knelt on the bed, using her little mouth to clean up the last traces for him. Although her originally flawless body was now covered in the bright red marks left by Hawthorne, she still appeared radiant and energetic, as if she would never tire no matter how long she continued. Extraordinary creatures, so powerful. After cleaning up, she leaned against Hawthorne again, her heavy chest pressing against his arm. Her big eyes, with long eyelashes, blinked, and they were filled with a gentle and watery tenderness. Master, I just drafted a simple contract. Take a look and see if it's suitable or not. Hawthorne reluctantly came to his senses and then saw, in front of him, the magical power condensing in mid-air, quickly forming a piece of dark green parchment. And on the parchment, written in pale blue universal language, was a contract. From this day forward, Party A and Party B enter into a contract. Both parties must strictly fulfill the obligations stipulated in the contract. If either party violates the contract, the violator shall surrender their soul to the other party for disposal. Rights of Party A. None. Obligations of Party A. First, Party A shall share unconditionally with Party B all knowledge that it is aware of, including but not limited to magic, history, religion, nature, and all other categories of knowledge and information, without any reason to conceal, alter, or delay. Secondly, Party A shall unconditionally share all of their magical powers with Party B. In the event that both parties require the consumption of magical powers simultaneously, priority shall be given to meeting the needs of Party B. Thirdly, Party A shall ensure the safety of Party B at all times, and if necessary, be willing to sacrifice themselves to ensure the safety of Party B. Fourth, Party A shall be responsible for meeting all the needs of Party B's daily life, including but not limited to food, accommodation, entertainment, and nightlife. Fifth, Party B's rights. Firstly, Party B has the right to declare Party A in breach of contract at any time. Secondly, Party B has the right to issue any instructions to Party A at any time, regardless of whether they are reasonable or beyond Party A's capacity limits. Obligations of Party B. None. At the bottom is the place for the signatures of Party A and Party B. Party A has written, Heidi, and has already signed, while Party B is still blank, waiting for Hawthorne to sign his own name. And he glanced briefly at the contents of the contract, immediately feeling a tingling sensation on his scalp. Heidi, isn't this contract a bit unfair for you? He still spoke too simply. This treaty is not just unfair, even slave contracts are not so harsh. Signing such a contract, even if the other party is a terrifying witch who devours people without hesitation, there will still be a trace of guilt in Hawthorne's heart. And in response to this, Heidi smiled and then softly said, I am afraid that my loyalty in the future may waver towards my master, so I plan to restrict my own actions with the strictest of contracts. Hawthorne raised his hand and gently caressed her face, while softly saying, But I believe in you, and I cannot tolerate myself exploiting my most loyal follower so cruelly. Saying this, he looked up and glanced at the contract again, then continued, Come on, Heidi, since you believe I am your master, then you must listen to your master and make some modifications to the content according to my instructions. First, delete the first clause of Party B's rights. He said this, and made many changes to the rights and obligations of both parties, ultimately forming a contract that is much fairer than before. At the very least, from now on, Heidi only needs to share her knowledge and a portion of her power with him, and he can no longer, solely based on this contract, drain Heidi's magic without any cost and control her life and death. To be honest, this new treaty is still very unfair. Party A is almost entirely giving while Party B's returns are few and far between, all depending on voluntary actions. But this way, at least Hawthorne's conscience felt much better, and in his heart, he secretly set a principle for himself. I will not let down any sincere witch who follows me faithfully. He silently muttered in his heart, and finally, with Heidi's help, he slowly signed his name on the contract. As a result, the contract slowly shattered and turned into countless pale green dots, merging into their bodies. Hawthorne immediately felt countless knowledge flooding into his mind, while at the same time, countless powers converged into his body. He had no resistance, relaxed his mind and body, and felt the immense and warm magic transmitted by Heidi. Oh, so this is what magic looks like. He then raised his left hand, and a pure water ball appeared in his palm. One ring spell. Create water/dry water spell. It went very smoothly and was successful. Hawthorne's lips curled slightly. He knew that at this moment, he had fully acquired the ability to cast spells and had become an exceptional presence in the entire port of Libel.